Hello and welcome back to the Polarity podcast, the show where an RTD fanboy and an RTD critic discuss the Russell T Davies era of Doctor Who. This is episode 6 and we are on episode 7 of series 1 of Doctor Who, The Long Game.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll just kick things off straight away because I really don't have a lot to say about this. I think this is the weakest of the series. It's still good. I don't hate it, and I don't love it. I think it's a solid story, but I don't have a lot to say about it at all, other than that I think it's the weakest of the run. Still admirable, but it's just there. It exists.
I don't have much to say about it either, but so far, I think it's the strongest.
Brilliant. Well, we can end the podcast there.
Yeah, that's basically it. See ya.
Yeah.
Alright. We disagree. We've done the polarity bit of it.
Yeah. Well, really better than Aliens of London?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Really.
It's
weird. It's just something, I just enjoyed it. I normally sit there and I watch the episodes and I write something down as I go. I try to keep the notes. But I just didn't want to stop this one.
Fair enough. I mean, I definitely like a lot in it, and I don't. I'm glad it exists, but it's also it's one of the most kind of nothingy episodes for me.
Enough.
It just is there. It just exists, but it's cool. I don't it's to give you an idea of how good I think series 1 is. When I think it's the weakest, but it's still good.
Yeah.
You know. I think where it shines is really it's a nice satire of the media, which is fun. It's not especially deep or anything, and it's not revolutionary and it's not groundbreaking, but it's nice and it's fun and it's kind of biting, I think it succeeds in its world building really well. I think there's a great amount of world building in this, the drinks and everything, like the slushy that apparently tastes like beef, is very fun and weird, and you've got it's an interesting kind of progression for the future of the human race, that everyone's got implants and stuff that will turn sick into ice cubes and quirky things like that. It's quirky, it's fun.
Yeah,
it's all very good, very fun, and I like that world building. I think that's where this shines. It
is.
It's pretty. It's good fun.
That's what I think. I think it's just a really enjoyable world. I think it's not my favourite sort of world. It is quite off-putting, but it's kind of intentional. And I think that I think the satire, it's not the most complicated, but it's just so tight. It's so well done. Even the fact that they've got these zombie journalists, the people, the single floor, the idea of this floor progression, the way every character in this is exactly where Doctor Who shines in my eyes. It's the way that everything is like a set piece for something. It's like the best of the McCoy years, where rather than being, it's this. I think sometimes in TV these days we're very accustomed to the idea of TV being specifically we need a world of really rich, deep characters and a world of really rich, deep lore, when sometimes what we need are characters that are set pieces to help describe an idea. And this is one of those classic examples of that, where the characters are only as deep as they need to be. The editor, for instance, he's not a particularly deep character, but he's so on point for what purpose he's serving. Everything about his characterization, he's the way he works with banks, the way he's just a bit up his own arse, the way he's so easy to just bend the knee to the Jagrafess, the way he takes delight in being a little servant but not really a servant, and it's very perfectly describing of certain people and certain just systems in industry, and I think he's really great for that, and that's such a valuable thing in storytelling that I think we often neglect these days.
Yeah, I agree. And there's it works in that regard. It's a fun. It's quite. It's for the Ninth Doctor. I think it's one of his most kind of, for want of a better word, generic Doctor Who stories. I guess he's not really dealing with anything that heavy. It's just he's having an adventure.
It's classic.
It's it's good, but I think where it kind of falls down for me is in series one's filled with so many memorable kind of challenging episodes and really more colourful episodes than this one. This I never really think about it; kind of gets a bit lost in the background. But it's I think throughout this I'm going to sound harsher on it than I actually am because it's yeah I don't know.
There's something so fulfilling for me as far as when I watched it, because this is one of those Doctor Who stories that the last time I watched it was when it came out, and it's like there's something so lovely about seeing an episode that I think is quintessentially classic. It feels to me like a classic Who story with like a Y2K aesthetic, and while it's not my favorite sort of aesthetic, I think the story in this case is one of those things where it really makes up for it, and it's just, I don't know. For me, it's almost like the reverse. It's like a diamond in the rough for me. Like, it's not that anything in this series is particularly bad. Except maybe Dalek. But aside from that, like I think on the whole, like in a sea of episodes that are kind of alright, I think this one's just so buzzing and sizzling and fun, and so like it feels more weirdly. It's more classic, but it feels in a way more bold because it's just like, here you go. Here's just Doctor Who at its most Doctor Who. Let's give the Doctor a real Doctor Who episode. And I think it's great for that. I really appreciate it for that.
It is good. It is good fun. I will disagree slightly that it's kind of sizzling, and I think there's a lot more energetic kind of episodes this series. But it is good fun. And like I said, I really enjoy the world building of it. I think that's where it shines for me. It's just you get this nice, and it links back to the end of the world a little bit because you get a little bit of the face of Bo on the TV screen because he's, it's pregnant and it's had a baby.
Yeah.
It's
got a really it's just really interesting. Like it's very like, I don't know. It's good vibes. There's something about
good vibes.
It,
it's good vibes. It just washes over me.
It is. It's lovely, and I think. Maybe this is an interesting episode for this in relation to this podcast because I think maybe it says something about what we're looking for as fans in Doctor Who, because we recorded this as like 2 episodes, right? So we've just recorded Dalek and now we're doing this, and this is our like block for today. And the previous one I've been really, really critical of an episode that is generally really highly regarded. This time, I am really, really praising of an episode that generally is ignored. And I wonder if the question now comes to, what
you
does that
contrarian
mean?
You.
Well, I don't even think I'm that contrarian.
I'm joking.
I've rated everything else pretty fairly. I don't normally have that strong feelings on the majority of the episodes. But these two, they have a certain feeling about it. And I just wonder, like, what's the appeal of that to us as fans? Is it that... Because there's something uniquely there is something very melancholic about this story. Something kind of grim, even though it's fun in a lot of places. It's got a sad tone to it, and it's got something slightly downcast about it, despite being, full of all this, like, different, like, funny moments. Especially in terms of the arc of, like, the editor and, the people who go up, rather, to get promoted in the society of this journalist station. I think maybe that melancholy really appeals to me, that specific type, where there's a gloom and doom system, and I just think that Doctor Who really excels at that, and it's very McCoy era for me. Whereas
it is, yeah.
I look at, say, obviously for you it's not... I say this as if you're not a huge fan of the McCoy era, but maybe it's more like a question of, like, maybe a lot of fans, like yourself, really seek that sort of really energetic Doctor Who, whereas
not always.
Not always, of course. I'm not. Yeah, I don't think it's fair to say I always look for slow Doctor Who, but maybe it points to more of a. You have more of a. Could you say like what do you call it? A disposition to it, maybe.
I know what you mean. It does kind of speak to how like Doctor Who can just be anything for different people, and that's what's good about it. You can love the grimmer stuff,
yeah,
and you can also love the light-hearted stuff, and both are very valid ways to enjoy the show, I think. So I think you're right. It does speak to how like different people look for different things in Doctor Who, and that's probably why it's got such a wide fan base. Is because there's something for everyone in it, in every era.
Yeah, and it's lovely for me, for instance, to be coming to this a series that I generally ignore. I usually, if I'm like, for instance, we did a big family watch of Doctor Who. So in 2016 or so, me and my family, we started Doctor Who from the beginning to the end. But my family are a bit like me. We've all got a similar attitude. So we considered the end to be the TV movie. We didn't watch beyond that point, and I don't generally find, unless I'm doing this especially for the podcast, but I wouldn't normally go back to these episodes. If you told me, oh Gav, do you fancy watching an episode from series 1? 9 times out of 10 I'm going to say no. But the nice thing is, because I'm in this position where I've got to for the review, is that actually I realise that I can discover these gems of stories that, because they're not discussed, because people don't just talk. I don't see like crowds of people being like, "Oh yeah, the long game." It means that when I come around to watching it, I'm like, "Oh, actually, you know what? I quite like this one."
Yeah,
and
that's true.
That's a really enjoyable experience. I think it's it's maybe it's like someone watching the Colin era for the first time and maybe watching Vengeance on Varos. Is that fair?
Yeah, I guess so.
Comparison, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I do. No, I do. I do know what you mean. I do know what you mean. It's interesting for sure. Yeah, I know. But going back to like the actual story, I think it's interesting. Like coming at it, like I said earlier, it's like the Ninth Doctor does a more kind of traditional Doctor Who story.
Yeah.
But I think Eccleston excels at it just like he always does.
100%.
I don't think there's anything stand out from him in this, but also the where he walks towards Adam at the end and the look on his face is terrifying.
It's filmed really well as well.
It's filmed really well. And like I said, yeah, the look on his face is it's sinister, isn't it? Like he's
on fire at that point, really.
He's in trouble, isn't he? Like old Adam. And I think it's great. Yeah, it's really. You always feel like the Doctor's going to go rough him up. Like he's just going to go beat him up outside the TARDIS.
No, honestly, it does look like. I can imagine, like, I think you can always see like a cut here where you just see like, you know, like in films and stuff, you know, or if you've ever really been out on the tiles and you see someone like thrown out by a bouncer at the end, and they're sort of like, you know, maybe they've been in a scrap or something, they come up bruised and battered.
So that clip from Father Ted where he goes into the pub.
Yeah,
it's like, no, Father, I won't let you do it. Believe me, it hurts. But believe me, you're going to thank me. And it just cuts to the ambulance.
Well, literally, I mean, I just can imagine like Adam stumbling out of the TARDIS, kind of clutching his back with two black eyes, looking like a panda.
Yeah,
just sort of like, oh yeah.
On the subject of Adam, then talking about companions in this, because I don't think that Rose has much. I think Rose has much to do at all. Really, I don't think there's much to say about her, other than I think Billie Piper's good as ever. But
yeah, Billie Piper is my one. This is one of my retrospective thoughts on this series so far. Is that Billie Piper is genuinely a great actress.
She's great. She's really bloody good. Yeah. And I Rose in the episode. I don't think there's much to talk about really.
Yeah.
I don't know if you have anything, but
nah. I think
otherwise we'll move on to Adam.
There's an interesting bit where she sort of seems to be the Doctor seems to have. There's an implication that kind of the Doctor's almost like kind of coaching her a little bit. I know it's it's probably more implied to be like of her own volition to want to like take charge and do it a bit like the Doctor. But knowing the character of the Doctor over the years, it almost feels like he could have maybe influenced Rose a bit that way, which I think is cool.
Yeah, I like that. But Adam then, so this is where I really kind of defend Adam's character because I admire the show for kind of telling this story. He's opportunistic, and he's rash, and eventually, you know, the episode ends with the Doctor saying, "No, you can't travel with me. You've lost that privilege because you broke the rules."
Yeah,
and I admire the show for doing that, and I spoke about it in the Dalek episode, but I am always just like surprised when people viciously hate on Adam because it's always just like, well, you're not meant to love him. He's meant to be this cautionary tale that not everyone is cut out for TARDIS travel, and not anyone can just jump on board and be a loved companion. And I admire that, really.
Yeah.
I don't, and again, it's like just these 2 episodes. I think for a 2-episode arc, it's yeah,
Nice. It's nice.
yeah, exactly.
I wondered watching it. I don't know. I wouldn't call it the most solid reading. It's just something that kind of came up. I wondered if there was an element of class commentary there as well.
Yeah, probably.
In the sense that Adam's like quite middle class, you could probably say. Whereas obviously Rose and the Doctor, specifically this incarnation of the Doctor, are quite clearly working class. And there's kind of there's a thing where like kind of it's almost like Adam is kind of squandering his privilege, as it were. He's not realizing how lucky he is to have this opportunity.
Yeah,
I just wonder, someone who's like, obviously because he's so academically focused, he doesn't seem to think about anything else within those realms. And I'm not saying that, I don't want to use that as a blanket statement for middle class people or anything like that. I just wonder whether it's like a presentation of the ideas of perhaps that like sometimes when you're in a more fortunate position, you might forget. I don't know. It's I wouldn't call it like a particularly intended reading. I think it's really just unintentional.
No, I know what you mean though.
It's a big theme in this whole series. I find as a working class man watching this series, I find it noticeable. Like, you know, I see those elements, and I just wondered if I was in there with his arc in particular.
No, I know what you mean. It's an interesting reading of it. It's definitely an interesting read of it. I've never really thought about that before, but yeah, you're right. I honestly just think, and you know, a bit of comedy with the brain implant thing.
God, that used to freak me out as a kid.
Yeah, so same. Yeah, because I just always thought, like, what if someone went up to it and like flicked it? Would he just die? Would someone just die? Someone just goes up to him and gives it a little flick or a poke, and he just dies. But yeah, and it's you get that quite camp ending with the whole. Where the
that's funny.
Clicks her fingers and it's the comedy shock face at the end. You know,
that mum character's got interesting implications when we get to the trivia. Doesn't she? Yeah, because I believe if I've got this correct, I believe she's a character that already existed in a different Russell T Davies work, which thus makes it a crossover episode in a way. I believe. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I read that. I think it was in the TARDIS wiki, so I don't know if it's like the most reliable source of all time, but yes.
Oh, I'm trying to find it. I can't quite.
I believe so. It was at the very bottom.
Oh, yeah, I see it now. Children's Ward. So it makes this a crossover.
This is technically a crossover episode, which I quite like.
That's quite funny. Oh, wow. Yeah, okay, that's funny. But yeah, I think it's safe to say we quite appreciate what they were trying to do with Adam, and I still don't really get the vitriol towards that character, because it's just
I don't get it.
Like,
it's a very inoffensive arc.
Yeah, I would understand it if he was in the whole series and he was, because he is annoying. But like, do you know what I mean? Like, if it was like this the whole series, then fine. But he's in 2 episodes and really only has an impact on this one, so I don't get the issue. But that's just me.
To me, he's a bit like Adric in Legopolis.
Yeah.
Well, no, I wouldn't say maybe he's not like Adric in Legopolis, because actually I genuinely think Adric in, say, the latter half of season 18 is legitimately like on his way to being potentially decent. It's kind of a similar thing, do you know? Like, it's not. Like
it's like if you complained about Adric after 2 stories.
Yeah, it's not egregious. He's just there for a bit. Like, put up with him, and he's not, and he's serving a purpose as well. You know, there are characters later on that start out perhaps more charismatic, but because they're there for so long, everything that they were set out to do is kind of made redundant.
Yeah.
Or they just kind of end up hanging like loose threads. But Adam has a perfect amount of time on there.
Do you do you remember have you ever heard of what the comics did with Adam's character?
Yeah, because he goes on some massive revenge streak, doesn't he? It's
absolutely
crazy.
Hilarious. So I believe it was the Titan comics, but because the Doctor left him, he goes ballistic and starts working with the Master in an attempt to kill the Doctor, and he turns into this supervillain. And there's artwork of him where he's just this completely evil thing.
That's
and then
MCU sort of.
And then there's a comic called Endgame, funnily enough, and Adam dies in it, and all the Doctors go to his funeral and they look over his grave.
and spit on it.
I know his
Level.
his grave is shaped like the TARDIS, and it's got a little light on the top, and they all look at it, and it says Adam Mitchell, a companion true, and all the doctors are there. It's ridiculous because like I believe my understanding is it's like a thing where Adam turns good again at the end and saves the Doctor or something. After being a literal supervillain, like he goes mad and starts wearing a cloak and things like that.
He doesn't need that. He doesn't need that. He doesn't need that. I think I understand the idea of taking a character that was perhaps not so popular and giving him a bit more of a spin, but
yeah,
when the function of his arc is done, I think it's just done. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I usually like that sort of thing, but not not in this case.
Great cast, this, isn't it?
Fantastic cast.
We've got Anna Maxwell Martin, who's absolutely hilarious in real life, and she's wonderful and brilliant. And it's always weird to see her in this because she looks so much younger for one, but like she's pretty well known now, I think, as an actress, so it's great. Tamsin Gregg, one of my favourite actresses, Friday Night Dinner fans, where you at? She plays the nurse. She doesn't even get a name, sadly, but Tamsin Gregg's a great actress, and she's brilliant in it, in a very deadpan performance as the nurse. And then Simon Pegg as the villain, the editor. What are your thoughts on him?
Oh, he's so fun. Like, he's such he's not doing anything particularly, like, it's not like a world-changing performance, but it's just good. Like, it's just really good. He's fun. He's like when you have to do a sort of campy classic Who villain, but you've cast a really good actor for it.
Yeah.
And it's just like it's played well. It's played just that right level. Really.
And you expect that from Simon Pegg, don't you? Because he's a great actor. Like, again, it's like 3 of my favourite actors and people are in this. And Simon Pegg, he's great as always. He's ever reliable. I've never seen Simon Pegg in something that I haven't liked him in.
He's brilliant.
And he was a fan of the show. I read his book a few years ago. He talks about, how much he loved being a proper baddie, like a classic baddie in Doctor Who.
He gets to be fair to him, if you were a fan of Doctor Who at that time, like you were filming for it before it kind of actually released again as it came back.
Yeah.
To be able to play such a villain, given the history of Doctor Who beforehand, wonderful.
Yeah, it's great, and the whole and how he works with the Jagrafess, the mighty Jagrafess of the Holy Hadrajassic Maxarodonfo, calls him Max.
Also has extreme. Sorry, I'm just snubbing all the trivia at this point, but it's interesting in this. But the Jagrafess growls over him doing the reveal of the name because Simon Pegg can't get it right.
Yeah. That's quite a well-known thing, isn't it?
I just thought it was interesting.
Is it Maxarodonfo or Maxaradonfo? Because he says it differently to how the subtitles say it, and then I think the official name of it is different to. But yeah, anyway, who knows? But
I'd have just changed the official name to go with what Simon Pegg meant.
Yeah, which is quite funny, but I think that works. Like you build up to the real, like Suki as a character, like her death is pretty horrific, and then you see her as like this frozen zombie. I like that aesthetic, like the ice stuff. It's good. It's good.
It's one of the things about this episode that's both a strength, but it slightly begins to reveal a slight weakness in this episode, and that's the fact that her death is off screen, which I think is a real strength in terms of because we don't know how the hell it's happening, other than the Jagrafess seems to be the cause of it. But it makes me wonder if doing this episode without the Jagrafess at all visible would have been a more interesting way to have done it, because the death is really compelling because we don't know how the hell she's died. We just know she's dead, and we see her
Very
dead.
true. Yeah.
It's not like he's eaten her, is it? It's not like he's taking a massive bite out of her. And given that all we see is
that
a
is
massive
true.
mouth,
Yeah.
it starts to make you think, what the hell else has it got on it? So it's I think that's interesting. So almost a part of me is like, well, it'd be interesting to have never seen it at all, maybe. But I think that's really cool.
But I think he's a cool monster. He serves his purpose as a growly monster for the episode, doesn't he? He doesn't need to be anything more than that. He works, and I like Simon Pegg's kind of rapport with it. Like, obviously, it's a CG thing and it's in the ceiling, but it's it's quite fun and boo hiss, isn't it? He's a boo hiss baddie, and I think that
Properly.
works.
It's
that
just
works
fun.
with this.
It's so nice. It's so
And
pleasant.
you remember the characters in this.
Yeah,
And again, I think that's a thing with the whole era, and you might disagree, but you remember RTD characters, and that's true in this.
I can't disagree with that because
you remember them, and they're memorable, and they're written to be memorable. Like Tamsin Gregg as the nurse, she's not named, but you remember her because of that deadpan performance and the way she's written. And there's a lot of that thing. Like you remember Kathika. Christine Adams is great as Kathika.
Kathika's amazing. I love
she's
Kathika.
Great. She's really good. And you remember that character. And it's good. It's good. It's just a solid. It's a great supporting cast. It really is. It's a really good cast. What do you think? Yeah,
sorry. I was just gonna say if you want an endorsement from me about RTD, bear in mind that I remember scenes with these characters, having last watched them in 2005 at the age of 3.
Yeah, well, there you go.
That's testament to how memorable these characters are. I just wanted to say that.
No. It's true. Like I love how he writes characters. It's one of the big things I'm looking forward to the RTD2 because I feel like recently we've kind of been deprived of like really memorable.
Yeah.
Not just main characters, but supporting characters. And I'm looking forward to seeing that kind of personality back.
Yeah.
But yeah. What did you think of like the overall the design and effects here? Because I'm interested to see what you make of the design because obviously you've not really enjoyed the general aesthetic of this era, but I wonder what you kind of made of the design of this because it is a bit different. It's a bit more.
This does have a lot of the trappings of the other parts of this era in terms of the fact that again everything is kind of rusty, everything's kind of worn down. Yes, it makes sense within the plot, but when every single plot has to have something that justifies this weird aesthetic, it does make it a bit weird. That being said, I do think it works quite well here. I think obviously if it were done today, I don't think it would be done the same way. I think it is a kind of a product of its time in that sense.
Oh yeah, definitely.
But I think there's some moments that do defy previous parts of the design. So Floor 500, yes, is rusted and kind of riddled with that kind of grunginess that, like all the rest is.
Love that word.
Well, it is, and then suddenly you're like transported to like but however, despite all this kind of rustiness or whatever it was, you've got all this like cold snow, blue tones. Really lovely. Like this is one of those things that I'm very partial to, but because I really love snow and cold and that sort of thing, I weirdly find Floor 500 for the eyes. Maybe I wouldn't, not in a general way, but for the eyes, it's a very enticing image.
Yeah, I agree.
I find it very appealing visually.
I agree.
That's the stress. I wouldn't just go up to. I wouldn't personally go up to Floor 500 and just sit there. I'd much rather be in the floor they start out in. But visually speaking, it's a real break. It's a real lovely break from everything else that does feel from the previous episode, from episodes before then, from episodes that come after, except for the one that comes directly after this. But all the other ones have that kind of very, very specific style that this one takes a bit of a break from, while also keeping within that sort of general aesthetic. It's probably a better example of how that design could be implemented in general, where there's clearly a house style. There's a handwriting to it, if you will, but it's more experimental. I think it's stretching that a bit more.
No, I know what you mean. It's good. What about there wasn't a lot of CGI in this, but like the CGI of the Jaguar I think looks pretty good.
It's pretty solid. There's a couple of moments where obviously masked up against like other areas it looks a bit funny, but it's not. It's visibly CG, sure, but to be honest with you, some of it's very impressive, like the way it shines and glistens.
I think the teeth is probably the teeth and the way they're kind of inputted into the mouth aren't brilliant, but I think it works.
It's good enough, I would say.
I think it works.
Yeah.
Direction, directed by Brian Grant, who didn't do anything else for Doctor Who. This is his one and only credit. It's good. It's directed well. I like it is directed well.
It's actually weirdly directed like a classic episode, I think, for the most part. There's a few the angles and the choice of shots and things like that. It's, for instance, those kind of classic kind of CCTV transitions and things like that, where you'll have a shot taken as standard as from like above, and then you'll have it cut out to a version with kind of I don't know what you'd call it, the kind of the lines and the kind of the UI, the interface of the cameras and things like that. You go out to the fuzzy camera as viewed from the screen by the baddies. That sort of perspective of the camera shooting, followed by then showing the camera quite literally. So there's kind of that hyper reality almost of that. That's very classic Who. I really like that.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, I like it. I rate it.
It's a nicely directed episode. Finally, music. I've got to be honest. I really don't remember any of the music in this.
I've got nothing to say about it. Yeah. In fact, there was so little to say about the music here that I've got notes for how to do the thumbnail of this episode written there instead because I had free space.
Fair play. So, yeah, I think it's just kind of Murray on autopilot.
There's nothing stand out here.
I can't really say anything. Should we go a bit of trivia then before the scores?
Can I do a mention about Kathika first? Kathika.
Go for it.
Companion material. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is this: if I were running this, the thing is with her is it would have almost worked quite well if I said in the previous episode that I think Rose's death would have been a really interesting and impactful thing to do here. I think the long game could have been a really good episode for a kind of change of hands. So you could have had Rose dying, the Doctor reluctantly going with Adam, ditching Adam straight away because he's shit, because he's annoying, and picking up Kathika instead.
Fuck me, Adam. Fuck me, Gav. If Rose dying wasn't enough to push the Doctor over the edge to become a psychopath, going with Adam in the TARDIS would be.
He'd have killed
Christ
him.
He'd have straight up killed him. He'd have become a murderer.
But I think
not just the Valiard. Something far worse.
But can you imagine how interesting that would have been for the character, though?
Bloody hell!
That's all I'm saying. I just think it would be interesting. But Kathika herself, I think, is just she goes through an arc that feels transformative. It feels interesting. She's got that classic, wonderful companion quality of she's got an ambition that is not really what she actually needs. And she realises that by the end of the story, which is a classic companion thing, because what usually follows from there is, okay, I need to do some exploring, let's go with the Doctor. So I just think she's perfectly set up even for it.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I think she'd be great as a companion. There's so many potential companions in this series, and I think she's one of the stronger contenders for that.
No, that's very, very true. Trivia! So, Russell T Davies based this episode on an idea he submitted to the Doctor Who production team in the 80s.
Yes.
Which is I find interesting because you mentioned the classic elements to it.
It is classic Who.
So you can see how this would fit in the classic template. So I find it interesting that he actually did submit this to the production office back then. I think that's quite telling.
It's one of the best stories I think he's done.
There you go. Funnily enough, this is the first story in the revived series of Doctor Who to feature an antagonist that did not return during the 10th Doctor era.
I don't get that, because I read that fact too, but did the Autons didn't return in the 10th Doctor era, did they? I'm just trying to think, they weren't in Torture, because I understand sometimes say with the Slitheen and stuff, they're not necessarily talking about the Slitheen with the 10th Doctor, they might be talking about during Sarah Jane Adventures, and it's not the Slitheen, it's the Batherine, but you know what I mean.
No, but I mean the Slitheen did turn up in the bar at the end of time.
Oh, okay.
So I think it means that maybe the Auton, but that is a point. Unless it means original creations.
Well, yeah,
of this show, if that makes sense.
Are there Reapers in any of them? Oh no, it's thus far.
The first so far, yeah.
Thus far. Yeah, I suppose that's true, isn't it?
So that yeah,
Autons. What about the Gelth?
Yeah.
Where were the Gelth?
That's a good point. Fucking hell, TARDIS Wiki, sort your fucking shit out.
Well, maybe they're right. I don't want to.
No, the Gelth, I don't think so. No.
I'm almost certain the Gelth never appear again.
No, that's really sort your fucking shit out.
Jesus.
Originally, this was going to be essentially a Doctor Light story.
Yeah.
The episode was originally intended to be focused entirely on Adam. Thank God that never happened, because although we've kind of defended Adam's character in this, like, Christ on a bike if he tries to carry a full story.
Well, also you'd miss a lot of great moments. I forgot to mention when we were talking about it in the main bulk of the episode, but 9 has a wonderful moment where he sends them off and the camera stays on him for a bit, and Eccleston's kind of face changes from this happiness and instantly goes back. It's like it's a really clear example of him like putting on a show for them.
Yeah,
it's a wonderful moment. You wouldn't have had that if it wasn't really focused, if he didn't have focus in it. Yeah.
Yeah. Also, I've just realised so many people from Shaun of the Dead turn up in this series. Yeah. Simon Pegg, Tamsin Gregg, Penelope Wilson.
Yeah.
Also, just ending on this, because I find it a bit interesting, it's a bit of drama. Simon Pegg later referred to Chris Eccleston as Old Misery Guts.
That intrigued me when I read it, because this is the first time I read the trivia.
Yeah, it does intrigue me.
That intrigued me. I was like, what happened there then?
A little bit interesting, isn't it? Yeah. And on that note, what would you give The Long Game out of 10?
Right, I'm umming and ahhing between two scores at the moment. So I think it's probably sensible that I go in between.
Okay.
So I'm going to give it a 7.5 out of 10.
Interesting. Okay.
Which I believe is my highest score so far.
It is. You gave, I think the second highest was Aliens of London, which gave us 7, I think.
Yep, there you go, 7.5. I'd agree with that. That's 7.5.
There we go. I will go 6. I think it's 6 out of 10. I think it's a good story. It's just like my least favourite of the series in a series that I really love. Actually, I do love how it, although it's a filler episode, it does play into the finale, because the events that take place here end up causing the breakdown of society that we find in the finale, which I think is really clever, because it means that even this one, which is the most filler episode of the series, it still has an impact, which I think is very clever. I like that a lot. I like that a lot, as subtle as it is.
I'm actually going to amend my score, actually. I think I will probably send it to an 8.5, just because I think
8.5?
I was thinking about it. I've just been thinking about it now. I think about 7.5. I think about 6, your score of 6, and I'm like, yeah, but I really like this. Whereas 7.5 feels like good. I think I want to say it's more than good, so I'm going to say 8.5. 8.5.
Fair enough. 8.5 from me.
I will amend that on my little chart.
8.5 from you, 6 from me. Yeah, I guess we'll wrap it up there then.
That's it.
So thank you for joining us for another episode of the Polarity podcast discussing The Long Game. Much shorter episode this week, I guess, as we didn't really have a huge amount.
That's all I can say about it.
To say about it, really, it just exists. Next time we'll be talking about Father's Day.
Yeah,
I'm excited about. One of my favourites. One of my favourites.
There's no Polarity next week.
No, it's going to be a very, very positive episode next week.
Yeah, it's going to be probably the most positive episode in the entire podcast, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
Get ready. If you're having a moody week next week, rest assured, there'll be a nice positive podcast coming out.
There will. In the meantime, you can follow us on Instagram and Twitter. You'll find the links to that in the description of the episode, wherever you're listening or watching it. We interact with people on there a lot, and you can follow our own personal Twitters and Instagrams as well, should you so desire. Be sure to rate the episode on Spotify and give it a like on YouTube, and give us feedback. Tell us what we're doing right and wrong, so we can, grow and improve, and hopefully, get better as we go along. This is we're enjoying doing this, and we hope you're enjoying it as well. So yeah.
And if you've got any friends who might like this podcast, pass it on. We love to see more people. It's lovely. I genuinely get such a, it makes me so happy when I see more people joining in and listening and talking about it. It's such a lovely thing. I'm really enjoying this, and I hope everyone is enjoying it too.
Yeah, absolutely. And we always want to grow. So, yeah. So, I think that's everything. We'll see you next time for Father's Day. Farewell, everybody.
Bye.